Welcome to this week's Thursday Thoughtful Thoughts. We are here in week 3 of our 4-week series looking at finances, trying to help you get a better grip on them, challenge your thinking, maybe help you to move forward in this area. This week we want to look at the area of budgeting. And the reality is if we don't budget, then we're kind of like the guy who spent $500 to rent a limousine, but he didn't read the fine print on his contract, and he didn't see that the $500 paid for the car, but not the driver. So in the end, he spent all that money and he had nothing to show for it. Seriously though, we can't say that we're serious about our finances if we don't have a budget. And I've talked to many people who have this negative idea about a budget being this constrictive thing, and they say, I don't want to have a budget because it'll take away my freedom. But a budget is not about slavery, and a budget is not about impeding your freedom. A budget is actually about freedom. A budget is you setting the priorities that you want to live by and setting those goals, and then giving you the parameters that you can have the freedom to work towards those parameters. As we talked about last week, there are a lot of people spending a lot of money and putting a lot of effort into separating you from your money. And you don't want that to happen. And a budget helps to keep that from happening. And the reality is that even a lot of people who think they have a budget don't really have a budget. What they have is an Excel spreadsheet that they start the month off with a list of what they think their expenses would be, and then another category or another column beside that where they list off what they think they will spend in each of those categories. And then they get to the end of the month and they fill in another category what they actually spent, and then they look to see whether they lived by their budget or not. And the reality is that's not a healthy or a good way to budget. That's the way governments budget, and how is that working for them? Not so good. But we want to do better than that. And I think you want to do better than that. And to do that, we need to take our budgeting to the next level. Not just tracking what we spent and hoping that it reflected what we set out at the beginning of the month as our goals, but that day by day we're looking at this thing and we are tracking along with it and we are making adjustments where needed. And so I want to give you 2 key thoughts about having a budget that you need to grasp and that you need to put in if you want your budget to in any way be worthwhile. The first one is this, is that a budget has to be flexible. If you have an unexpected expense, then you need to adjust your budget in the middle of the month to account for that. That means you may have to take some money from one account and put it in another, or from a different account and put it in another. But we have to recognize that things are going to happen, and they're going to happen every month. Very rarely is nothing going to happen a month. Very rarely are you not going to have some unexpected expense. And so you need to be prepared to roll with this and to be able to make those adjustments in real time as needed. If you wait till the end of the month, that's too late. Then you're no longer budgeting. You're just tracking and reviewing what you spent, which is valuable, but it's just not as good as working with it day by day. The second thing is that a budget has to be realistic. Your budget can't be based on the best month of income that you ever had. If you're in sales, you had that one month where you had some fantastic month and the greatest commission that you'd ever had, and you go, I'm hoping to do that again. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But you can't assume that every month will be your best month ever. So your budget has to be realistic. It can't be based on a month when your expenses were super low, because maybe you bought groceries the last day of the previous month, so your grocery bill was a little less than usual. Or the weather was perfect, so the furnace never came on. Or no one needed clothes or a haircut. Or nothing broke and needed repairs. Thank God for those months when they do happen. But don't plan on every month being that month. The best way to start is to look over the last 3 or 4 months and look at what you spent on average in each category that you set up inside your budget, because you want your budget to be realistic. Your budget is only as good as the numbers that it represents. So if those numbers, either your income is too high or your expenses are too low to what reality is going to be for you, it's only going to lead to frustration and then throwing the budget out the window, which isn't what any of us want. So make sure that your budget is flexible and realistic. And it's important to remember that no one has it all. And what a budget does is it helps us to identify those things that we care about, those things that are our priorities, and then designate funds to work towards those things that we've identified as our priorities so that when we work towards those, we know that we're achieving the success that we want, that we've prayed into, the goals we've set, those things that we've defined as the things that matter to us. So don't just copy somebody else's budget. Don't just take one off the internet, but sit and spend some time saying, what do we want as a family unit, as a household, however you're going to do your budget, what do we want our budget to look like? What are our priorities? What things matter to us? And that may be different than your neighbors. That may be different than your friends. That's okay. Set a budget that works for you. Let me just conclude by paraphrasing that great philosopher Woody from the movie Toy Story. He said, moving buddies, if you don't have one, get one. And I will say this, budgets, if you don't have one, get one. We'll see you next week.